Peter Obi and Labour Party lawyers today stormed INEC headquarters in Abuja to inspect election materials. And tonight, we speak to candidates jostling for the Delta State governorship seat. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbalo in Abuja. Let's begin by telling you one of our major story of the day, where the legal team of the Labour Party presidential candidate, Mr. Peter Obi, has met with the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to commence the inspection of election materials used for the February 25th presidential election. The head of the legal team, Mr. Levi Uzoku, led a team of over 60 lawyers to the Commission's headquarters to discuss modalities for obtaining the document. Take a listen to Mr. Uzoku.
Is that you will get these documents.
We have not received any electoral document from INEC that will enable us to file petition on behalf of our clients. And as you all know, election petition is time sensitive. We have 21 days to file petition on behalf of our clients. Out of that 21 days, we probably have about 10 days to go. And up till now, we have not received any documents. Less than 10 days. We have written to INEC requesting for the documents. Apart from that, the Court of Appeal made an order on the 3rd of March, ordering INEC to release those documents to us, but we haven't received any. Hence, we requested for a meeting with the chairman of INEC, and he graciously granted us that audience within a very short notice. And he has given us assurance, concrete assurance on record, that all documents we require will be made available. And if possible, some of them will be made available to us today. So, and we believe that that will happen. And we are living here, rest assured that, out of this hall, by the time we leave INEC premises, that the documents, at least we leave with some documents. And the rest could then come from tomorrow, next, and so on and so forth.
That is a lawyer to Mr. Peter Obi and the Labour Party. The INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, is assuring that the team of the Commission's cooperation will be granted, saying the electoral umpire has nothing to hide. Take a listen to the INEC chairman.
I want to assure you that the Commission will not hide any document from anybody and will make any document that they have requested. There are two categories of documents. Those that are in possession of the headquarters of INEC will easily make these documents available to you, specifically the EC8Ds from the states and the ECDA, which is the collation at the National Collation Center by the Commission itself, the EC8E, the declaration, so meaning a total of, I think, 39 documents. This we can easily certify and give you almost immediately. As for other documents that we are asking for, they are actually, so we need to work out the schedule so that we know when your team is going to which state and on which date, so that we can easily facilitate not just certification of documents, but also the inspection that you requested for of these documents.
And chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, giving assurances of the support to be given to the Labour Party legal team. There's so much to talk about tonight. We'll be getting some very sound legal advice and insight into what is happening in the nations regarding the election, and of course the governorship election which is now being rescheduled for the 18th of March 2023. Mr. Femi Falana will be speaking with us on the program. Then, of course, we'll be hearing from some of the governorship candidates in Delta State why they think they are best for the job. So stick around with me, everyone, because first and foremost, we need to go around the states in the country to get to your political roundup stories. And my colleague Victoria Long John is here to bring us up to speed.
Thank you, Sheung. Hello, everyone. I am Victoria Longjun, and here are your political roundup stories for today. The Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali Baba, has directed commissioners of police in charge of state commands to swiftly conclude all election-related investigations. The Force Public Relations Officer Olamuyiwa Adejobi, in a statement today, reveals the IGP's directive that the police commissioners are to forward their case files to the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) for prosecution. According to Adejobi, the investigations encompass all cases of violations against the 2023 Electoral Act during the February 25 President National Assembly electioneering process. The appeal court today heard the appeal on the case by Senator Ademola Adeke, challenging the decision of an election petition tribunal which nullified his victory in the Osun governorship election. The appeal court says judgment on the matter will be given at a later date as a three-member panel led by Justice Mohammed Shuaibu takes the arguments and adopts the briefs of all parties in the suit. The leadership of the ruling All Progressives Congress APC has held a meeting for senators-elect and members of the House of Representatives-elect at the banquet hall of the Presidential Villa in Abuja. The president-elect was not cited, but the running mate and vice president-elect, Senator Kashim Shettima, is among those in attendance.
It's understanding between the party, National Assembly members, and as well to look at the Constitution that's very clear that the National Assembly members should pick their leaders within themselves.
The question about zoning was that let's, tarry a while, let's leave everything for now. Until we finish the elections.
The social cultural organization Ohanes Ndibo has called on the national leadership of the ruling All Progressives Congress to zone the Senate presidency of the 10th Assembly to the southeast geopolitical zone of the country. The Secretary General of the group, Mr. Okechukwu Isiguzoro, made the call during the press conference in Abakaliki, the Ebonyi State capital. Mr. Isiguzoro urged President-elect Senator Bola Tinubu to form a government of national unity. The Labour Party governorship candidate in Delta State, Mr. Pella Kennedy, is asking the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) to ensure that polling unit results are transmitted real-time on Saturday when the elections will hold. The candidate, who addressed journalists after a meeting with Chief Edwin Clark in Abuja, maintains that the Labour Party will not allow a repeat of the issues with the INEC results viewing portal during the just concluded presidential and National Assembly elections.
They actually acted in impunity against the law and did not transmit results like they were supposed to. We won't let that happen again.
Meanwhile, Chief Edwin Clark explains why the Pan-Niger Delta Forum withdrew their support from the PDP in Delta State.
Any South man who supports Atiku in particular, or another presidential candidate, will not support him.
The Social Democratic Party governorship candidate in Delta State, Mr. Kenneth Gbagi, is confident that the people of Delta have resolved not to vote the All Progressives Congress and the People's Democratic Party in the forthcoming governorship election on March 18. Mr. Gbagi, who is a former Minister of Education, made the remark during the press briefing in Ughelli, positioning himself as the best candidate for the job of governor, and also describes the oncoming election as a deal-breaker where Deltans must get it right to liberate themselves from bad governance.
I know I can industrialize Delta. My strength is industrialization. Unless we bring all our moribund companies back to work, unless we take all our children out of the street.
A Niger Delta Peace and Governance Advocate Group are asking all political parties and candidates that lost in the just concluded presidential elections to accept the outcome of the process for the sake of peace and unity. Addressing some group of women in Asaba, the state capital, the leader of the group, Mr. Benson Onuwaje, appeals to them to exercise patience and work together to promote peace and unity of the country, assuring them that the incoming administration will bring good governance to the nation. Governorship candidates across different political parties in Gombe State have endorsed Governor Inuwa Yahaya of APC as their preferred candidate for the March 18 election. Speaking on behalf of the 8 political parties, governorship candidate of Zenith Labour Party, Mr. Mohammed Ghana, says their decision is due to Governor Yahaya's track record in transforming the state.
We find it necessary to rally around him and give him the necessary support for his second-term ambition.
And that's your political roundup stories. It's back to you, Sheon.
Let's go to Delta State, where we shall be looking at the issues relating to the governorship election. If you look at what has happened in the last election, the presidential election, of course, one of the states to look out for is Delta State. For the very first time since 1999, the PDP, People's Democratic Party, lost out in that state in the presidential election. If that pattern of voting continues, what could it portend in the governorship election? The Labour Party, the party that has never won the presidential election in that state since 1999, defeated all political parties to emerge winner in the presidential election, which is home to not only the incumbent, but also incumbent governor, but also the running mate to the PDP presidential candidate. Tonight, let's speak with the candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Kennedy Pella. Joins us live here in Abuja studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Pella, for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Are you ready?
Very. Very.
I mean, you look a bit brightened up. I've seen a few videos of you. You look a bit more ruffled by the race and the campaign, or you look a bit relaxed. As the result of, or does the result of the presidential election brought to bear any lesson at all?
Yes. I'm brighter because I had one good night of sleep yesterday when I came in. But definitely, we went into that election believing that INEC was going to live up to its billing, that they were going to give us free and fair elections. They did it partway, and then they abandoned it, not uploading the results. The lesson we've learned from that is not to take things for granted. As per the elections itself, not to take things for granted. We're going to ensure that this time we ensure that in the governorship elections, we follow through to ensure that our results count as they should.
Did the result in Delta State, your party won there, isn't it?
We did win the presidential.
Was it a fair election?
It was fair. It was fair. But we believe that the results would have been higher. There was still a lot of manipulation. And that happened even more with National Assembly elections. There are seats that we won that the results were manipulated. So take the Delta North Senatorial District, okay? That result, because of the manipulations that happened, they declared, the PDP the winner of that seat. That also happened in Warri South, and the Warri Federal Constituency, happened in Undokwa Federal Constituency and the Ika Federal Constituency. So those are seats that we won. We won fair and square.
You won, but INEC, that was not the when you say you won in the sense that you think that you won.
No, not just we think that we won. The results from the units show that we won. But the results were manipulated at collation.
So the outcome, what was declared, is different from the result that you think you have.
Yes.
So you can't say you won it.
Well,
the reason why I'm saying,
you
can only win when it's officially declared. You may have a figure that is different from the official figures, which can contest in court anyways. Or petition INEC on those results. But officially, you did not win those results.
But to that extent, yes.
Yeah. So, but when you say on one hand that it was fair, on the other hand you think that the results were manipulated, who are those people that manipulated it?
Okay.
Where were your agents?
Good question. Now, again, one of the lessons we learned from this last election, the agency issue was a major concern, a major area of concern for us in the Labour Party. So in some cases, we had weak agents, especially at coalition, okay? But one of the biggest problems is that, you know, typically the elections at the grassroots, so the presidential was not as contested as the National Assembly elections. And so you then had those situations where, so take a place like Warri, the Warri Federal Constituency, all right? Every effort was made to manipulate that situation. They ensured we didn't vote on Saturday so that the mass number of people that came out, their results wouldn't count, all right? And then they then came out on Sunday to vote, reducing the number of people. And there was just the process of manipulation, the release of results. There was a ward that was cancelled. We had agreed would be cancelled. We won that ward, but because we were winning overall, we had agreed that result would be cancelled. By the time they were eventually releasing results, there were results from that ward. So those are the kinds of things that happened, all right? We resisted it. We resisted some of those things, but at the end of the day, you know,
so you've learned your lessons.
We've learned.
I mean, could you also be the attribution or the feeling that people had that you did not have structure? Did that also, was that an issue also because you said you had weak agents?
In some places.
Could that be? Could that be a factor?
Yeah, to that extent, yes. The people were the structure. Now, a lot of our people did not have the kind of experience that was required. Okay, so I would agree with that. But this election showed that the people are the ones that have the power, all right? Now, we're going to make sure that in the next election, this doesn't happen again because we're strengthening the positions in those areas that are weak, and we'll make sure that doesn't happen again.
What confidence does the last result, the February 25th election result in Delta State, what kind of confidence does this give you? Perhaps maybe the right way to get the right answer is where do you rank now after the election? Because you perhaps were not being listed as in the first three, but now after that election, where are you ranked?
You just gave me the answer. You just gave me the answer because they didn't see us coming. They were shocked by it. They were shocked by the determination of the people to ensure the kind of change that they wanted. So they didn't see us coming. They didn't rank us like you said. And now we're front runners. We're front runners. We've learned our lessons from that, and we will definitely, we're much more confident than we were even before the election.
So they didn't see you coming. You don't have the requisite structure.
Yes.
I mean, but you have the support base. Because when people talk about structure, I'm not sure a lot of people understand what they meant by structure. I mean, party having its feet in every nook and cranny. Those are the people that, even when those running for office are not around, you have people traditionally on the ground who are doing the job. I think those are some of the areas where people talk about structure.
Yes.
But in that sense, you say you've learned your lesson. They didn't see you coming. Patterns of election change from election to election. We've seen presidential election and governorship different from the result.
Yes.
Do the people, or can the people of Delta State relate with the Pella as a candidate, other than the fact that they went to the poll on the 25th to vote for Peter Obi?
Definitely. We've been doing a lot of work in that respect. Yes, the Peter Obi factor is important, okay? It gives us a springboard, if you like, all right? But a pillar is, this pillar is standing on its own, to the extent that in the last few weeks, I've been able to go around and show people what I'm made of. I've been able to show people that I have a vision for Delta, a vision that will move Delta from where it is to where it should be in the Committee of States. And that's beginning to resonate across the state. So I'm very sure that the people will be able to relate with my candidacy.
Do you fall within the questions that have been raised about the balancing of power in Delta State. We've heard over the years of how the top tribal groups or the top ethnic groups they're the majority ethnic groups in Delta State, and I wouldn't say minority, but there are other ethnic groups who are not of, in terms of population, who don't have as much dominance as the others. How does your candidature fall or fit into the balance of the equation of Delta State politics?
Yeah, in the balancing of politics in Delta, it's the turn, if you like, of the Robos. I am a Robo. I am from Oginibo in Uyemi Kingdom of Ughelli South Local Government. So yes, I come from the place that is expected to produce the governor. Actually, all the candidates of most of the parties come from Robo stock.
And all of you are going to be jostling for the votes in the Yoruba land?
Yes.
And seeking other votes from other places?
Yes.
So where do you fit in? When you say, oh, experience and capacity, do you have what it takes to be governor of Delta State?
In terms of, let me start with capacity. In terms of capacity, I'm an economist. I read economics. I became an investment banker. I left investment banking and I have been an entrepreneur, running a real estate company, running power company, being director of an agri company. And so I have a background in wealth creation, okay? Now, political experience. I ran for local government 22 years ago. Won my primaries, but you can see I didn't win.
Yeah.
But the system at the time didn't let me become. Now, I've stayed in politics since then, been involved. I was member of council and acting chairman of the National Institute for Sports for a period. I was chairman of my state mortgage bank for a period. I was a member of council for the Delta School of Marine Technology for a period. So in terms of political experience, I may not have had that executive experience or legislative, but the key thing is what Delta needs today is not another paper shuffler. What Delta needs today is not another person that will administer what we receive. What Delta needs today is wealth creation. What Delta needs today is to begin to grow the economy of the state. What Delta needs is the visionary leader.
Are you such?
I am, most definitely.
Have you been able to convince the people of Delta State about that?
I believe so. I believe so. I've been around Delta and I've been communicating my message, and I think that message is resonating across Delta.
All right. Just give me a moment. Let me, because I'm trying to connect with Mr. Falana, and it's this over satellite, and since I have you physically, I'm confident that I have you beside me.
No problem.
Let me speak.
No problem.
To Mr. Falana. I don't know if you can hear me now. Can you hear me now, Mr. Falana?
Perfectly well.
Oh, great. It's good to hear you. Great. So the first question that I asked earlier about the election, I wanted to know your own assessment of the presidential election and National Assembly election of the 25th of February.
Well, the presidential and National Assembly elections were marked by insecurity in many places, late arrival of materials, violence and thuggery, manipulation of the results. INEC has admitted that there were logistics and technological challenges. That is the way INEC has put it. So nobody is saying that the election was perfectly conducted. There are challenges. What we may therefore have to address, and that is the issue that will come up before the courts, is the degree of crisis that occurred with respect to the election. INEC will have to go back to the drawing table and fine-tune its strategies. Because INEC said, with respect on a review of the Presidential National Assembly election, that we painstakingly made plans to conduct the election. However, the implementation had some challenges. For me, I think that is admission on the part of INEC that all did not go down well.
Okay, so...
And what we may have to do, therefore, learning from the experience. I mean, for instance, INEC said there were problems that arose that were not anticipated. And of course, the members of the political class have likely shown that they are not really prepared to allow democracy to survive in our country. And that is why, for me, it is not enough to review the last election without putting on trial those who have been arrested for various electoral malpractices, electoral malfeasance, manipulation of results, illegal possession of arms and ammunition, shooting recklessly to scare voters, and those who were caught with money with a view to inducing voters. So it's not sufficient to say, oh, we have learned our lessons, we now want to have the governorship and House of Assembly elections conducted on the 18th of March. No, that will not be enough, because if you do not arraign those who have been arrested for electoral offenses, you are simply telling them, come again. So we must make an example of those who have been arrested. I mean, happily, and I think other police formations will have to follow the good example of the Lagos State Police Command. The Commissioner of Police, Mr. Ido Omonhua, did promise when we had the meeting a couple of weeks ago that all those who have been arrested will be charged before the appropriate courts. Those who committed electoral offenses have had their files submitted to the INEC. And I think some were caught with arms and ammunition have been arraigned in the courts in Lagos. I am aware that in Port Harcourt, a legislator caught with about $498,000 have been charged before the court, but it's a wrong court. I mean, a wrong charge. But it is a wrong charge. Instead of charging him with inducement of voters, a plan to induce voters, I think he's been charged with money laundering. In Kano, a legislator has been taken to court for culpable homicide. But I think magically, a couple of days later, he emerged in the Federal High Court that has no jurisdiction on culpable homicide. And he was said to have been granted bail. Why the spirit of the two people that were killed are demanding justice. The two people that were killed are crying for justice in their graves. So as far as I'm concerned, please, the authorities, INEC, will have to work with the police and other security agencies to put on trial those who have been arraigned for exposing the country to ridicule.
Mr. Falana.
That should be done before Friday.
All right.
So that those who are going to participate in the election will know that it's no longer business as usual.
All right. So if you look at it, it's quite a journey in our electoral process and in our democratic journey in this country. Is there any positives that we can take out of that election? Did we move at all in our electoral journey? Is there any success or progress that has been made so far, taking a lesson, a cue from the experience of the 25th of February?
Yes, for sure. There are some positive developments that were recorded. For instance, like the gentleman was saying earlier, the myth of structure, these political structures has been destroyed. Secondly, I mean, whereby people have shown that we are the structure. The people are the structure ultimately. Secondly, young people have also shown this time around that we are going to determine the future of our country. Thirdly, you no longer have to be a money bag to contest election in Nigeria. Another development is that whereas the National Assembly, the Senate chambers, has been converted to a resting home for former governors, this time around, many of the governors lost their seats. I mean, they lost in the elections, and so they won't be able to go to the National Assembly. The other development is that sitting governors and a sitting president could not deliver, could not win their states for their political parties. So, in spite of the challenges, a number of positive developments have been recorded by our country. And of course, I think the most significant is the use of bimodal voter, systems, the accreditation through BVAS, it has improved the accreditation of voter. The failure of INEC to upload the results in their central server is a major challenge. But I hope that will not be repeated when you are going to have the governorship and House of Assembly elections.
Because I was just going to ask you for what INEC needs to, or the nation generally, on every stakeholders that will be part of that election of Saturday, what we need to work towards in assuring that the election of the governorship and the State House of Assembly and the supplementary election for the National Assembly is way better than what we saw on the 25th of February. If there are a few things that you can tell INEC tonight, or security agencies, or any of the stakeholders, what would this be?
No, Sean, please, can you come again?
So I was just going to, you were mentioning a few things that we cannot afford to go into the next election with, and I was going to follow up on that to say, can you give highlights? You met with the Commissioner of Police in Lagos State. A few of the infractions that you saw in the last election, a few of the positives that you said can be taken away from the last election. But going into the governorship election, it's another kettle of fish altogether. What should Nigerians be hoping for? Yep. What should INEC be doing to ensure that the governorship election of Saturday, the 18th of March, is near perfect?
Well, in the case of Lagos, we've met with the Commissioner of Police. It was a very good meeting to assure all voters in Lagos State that people are going to exercise their democratic right without any harassment or intimidation. Happily, the Inspector General of Police has already directed police commands in other states in the country to hold similar meetings with community leaders, the human rights community, the youths and faith-based organizations, so that we can have an election devoid of intimidation or harassment. We have also met with the REC, the Resident Electoral Commissioner in Lagos State, and he has assured us that the delay in the supply of electoral materials in certain areas on February 25th will not be repeated. I'm also in touch with the chairman of the INEC, Professor Yakubu Mahmoud, I beg your pardon, who has also assured me that there will be a lot of improvement, you know, in the forthcoming election. But for me, Nigerians have to be vigilant. Voters have to insist on their rights. Voters have to be furnished with the telephone numbers of security officers, the police, state security service officials, and so on and so forth, so that if there is any embarrassing situation, they can make calls and ensure that problems are attended to. So, but vigilance is very important on the part of voters.
Yeah. So, Mr. Falana,
also want to warn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you.
Some political leaders who took advantage of their official positions.
All right.
To harass voters and electoral officers.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you quickly before we go on our first break. There were questions that have been raised in respect of the section 60, 61, 62, 63, 64 of the electoral law, which is one of the infusion into the election laws, which says that the INEC has the powers, the statutory powers, to review an election result that is deemed to have been declared under duress, or that's deemed to have been declared and found out later on that such election results are fraudulent. And there are those who have accused INEC of lack of substantial compliance with that provision. Let me get your view on that based on what the scenarios that played out and brought to the notice of INEC.
I am aware, or rather I have confirmed, that in the case of Kano State, where a legislator was alleged to have put a gun, in the head of the returning officer, whereby he made the declaration and pronounced the legislator the winner of an election under duress, the returning officer is a professor. He sent a strongly worded petition to the INEC, and in the circumstance, INEC had no choice but to cancel the election, even though it had a return had been made, which was found to be fraudulent. I am not sure that that had been done in other cases, because it's now past 7 days after the election. So whoever didn't have his own petition treated in like manner will have to go to the tribunal.
I mean, this was one of the issues that was raised at the National Coalition Center when a few of the political parties came up and said they have issues with the coalition and the announcement of the result, and they wanted INEC to take a pause. And, you know, they alluded to these provisions of the review of the result. Do you see the relevance of that law in that respect?
Well, from the information at my disposal, INEC had a lot of complaints. And I was informed that if they have to address each and every one of them, there was going to be a crisis. And so, INEC, therefore, you know, has asked all those new complaints to head for the tribunals, where those who are alleged to have manipulated the results of the election will have to be sued together with INEC.
Mr. Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, has been speaking with us on the program tonight, assessing the election of 25th of February 2023 and looking ahead to the governorship election of 18th of March 2023. Let's get back to the conversation with Mr. Falana. Mr. Falana, looking ahead of the next Saturday election, you, in a statement, said that you're worried about the voter apathy that we saw. But in our past election, it's been a trend. How can we change that?
Well, we're expecting some improvement this time around because young people register to vote, many of them for the first time in their lives. But this time around, because of the excruciating monetary policy of the central bank, whereby many people who had registered in their home states could not travel, could not leave their places of work. In my office, not less than 3 lawyers informed me that they couldn't vote because they registered outside Lagos and they haven't transferred, you know, their votes. I mean, voting in Lagos. And you have many were also challenged. You also had a situation where quite a number of undergraduates were disenfranchised because they had registered in their campuses. But NUC, for reasons best known to it, gave an illegal order that every undergraduate be asked to go home. The NUC has no such power, you know, because closing of schools, closure of universities is the business of the Senate and Council, I mean, Senate in particular, of every university. But, you know, the country is operating on the basis of impunity. So you have other factors that reduce the turnout of voters. Whereas in 2019 it was 35%, this time around it went down to 27%. And since the central bank has refused to comply with the judgment of the Supreme Court, it's going to be difficult to expect any improvement next Saturday.
So, if you look at what we're seeing presently, INEC is promised that the IRF portal will work. But although the IPAC on the program yesterday said there's smell a rat, and presidential election results are not being uploaded as of the time that it was promised, but other results in the National Assembly were being uploaded on the same portal, which INEC has said has some glitches. In that respect, based on the promises, you said you've spoken to the INEC chairman. What are your views? Do you believe? Do you trust? Can we take the words of INEC for what it is right now, going into the next Saturday election?
Well, INEC has postponed the governorship and House of Assembly election by 1 week, so we will not expect any complaint this time around. You've taken a date, a week to reconfigure the system. You've also taken a day to put your house in order. In all respects. So Nigerians will not want to accept any excuse this time around. And I do hope that INEC will not make the mistake of, not uploading the results. But my honest view, having regards to the enormous cost spent on our elections, I do hope that at the end of the review, we are going to have our election conducted the same day. In other words, instead of giving me 3 ballot papers to tick 1 of 5, so that we can save a lot of money. Thank you.
All right. The president of the Nigerian Bar Association today, Mr. Mikel, has called on the president to immediately direct the compliance with the terms of the orders made by the Supreme Court in his judgment delivered on the 3rd of March in respect of the Naira redesign policy. And there has been accusation that there is blatant disregard to the judgment of the highest court in the land. But the president today, in a statement, has come to say, released by Mr. Garba Shehu, said, look, there is no intent of impunity on the side of the presidency, and there's no being any instruction given to the Attorney General of the Federation and the CBN governor to disregard the orders and the judgment of the Supreme Court of the land. I mean, based on the response of the presidency and the issue of the scarcity of the Naira, which in part he said was responsible for the voter apathy that we see, the president has said there is no any kind of impunity on our own side. What are your views on this, Mr. Falana?
With profound respect to Mr. Garba Shehu, there are a lot of discordant notes oozing out of the seat of power. The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mr. Abubakar Salami, SAN, did say, when he was asked why the government hadn't complied with the order, that he is not suited. He doesn't have the competence to advise on monetary policies. on the part of the central bank government. Banks were asked not to disburse old naira notes without the mandate of the central bank. The lawyer, the senior counsel, a respected lawyer that represented the federal government in the Supreme Court case, Chief Kanu Agabi, SAN, did assure the nation, as soon as the judgment was delivered, that the federal government was going to comply with the terms of the decision of the Supreme Court. Curiously, this federal government has not complied with the judgment of the Supreme Court. The central bank has not been asked to make a statement, allowing the banks to comply with the judgment of the Supreme Court. Again, as I said before now, this can only happen in a banana republic. You cannot filibuster. You cannot dance around the judgment of the Supreme Court. Otherwise, you are simply saying you do not want the rule of law to operate in your country. And it's very sad. I do hope that this outgoing government will comply with the judgment in totality. But for the president of the NBA, it's good that he has rather come out, even though rather belatedly. But I'm going to appeal to him, since he has said that the NBA was going to collaborate with INEC to prosecute electoral offenders. They have to put the machinery in place now, because electoral offenders, some of them have been arrested. We need to have them put on trial now. Since INEC said, oh, we do not have facilities, for prosecuting electoral offenders, and good enough, the Nigerian Bar Association has offered to them. We did it in 2011 successfully when Professor Atahiru Jega was INEC chairman. Now that Professor Mahmoud has also said, we're ready to collaborate with the NBA. Both organizations, INEC and NBA, should assemble a team of lawyers to fight charges in the appropriate courts, so that those who are convicted will serve as, conviction of such people will serve as a deterrent to other potential electoral offenders. And I believe they can do it. Our good friend Mike Igini did it successfully in Akwa Ibom, whereby, based on insistence, a couple of lecturers, were jailed for manipulating election results in favor of a particular candidate. So I think the judgment, coming back to the judgment of the Supreme Court, it must be obeyed. And the earlier the better, so that those who may want to travel to exercise their democratic right will have access to their own legitimate money.
All right. Mr. Falana, let's wrap up this manner. The president in that statement has said it is an established fact that the president is an absolute respecter of judicial process and the authority of the court. He has done nothing in the last 8 years or so to act in any way to obstruct the administration of justice because of lack of confidence in the administration of justice, or otherwise interfere or corrupt the court, and there is no reason whatsoever that he should do so now when he's getting ready to leave office. Those are the words coming from the presidency, that The president has said he has no history of disobeying court orders. I'd like you to anchor on that note and give us your final thought.
The statement does not reflect the situation in the country. I mean, I have found cases where we got court orders for the release of detainees, Ezaki and his wife, Shore and others. Not only did the government ignore the orders, the Attorney General came out publicly to say, we ain't going to comply with those orders. Colonel Sambo Dasuki was detained for 4 years. The High Court, the FCT High Court, and the ECOWAS Court ordered this relief. The government ignored the orders until I now insisted in the case of Shore that you either release this guy or we take the Attorney General for contempt. And the DGSS says it was at that stage the government now released him and released Colonel Sambo Dasuki. In the case of Ezaki and his wife, when the government could no longer justify their detention, the governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, decided to file a frivolous charge of culpable homicide against them. Again, we got them freed. So we have such cases, very many. And to confirm my statement, in an address presented to the Nigerian Bar Association on August 26, 2018, President Muhammadu Buhari said publicly, my government will not obey certain orders in the interest of national security. I recall that occasion. My reaction was that national security is part of the rule of law operating in our country. So if by virtue of section 45 of the Constitution, you want to disregard the court order, you have to go back to the court to say, for this reason, for that reason, my lord, can you please vary your order in the interest of national security? For this government, and this was noted in the judgment of the Supreme Court, that this government has a history of disobeying court orders. Now that the government is on its way out, I do hope that the government will turn a new leaf.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Indeed, thank you so much for your thought there. Thank you so much indeed, everyone, for staying with us on the program. Let's get back to the conversation with Mr. Kennedy Pella, who is the Labour Party governorship candidate in Delta State. Thank you so much indeed for your patience. I did mention earlier that a few of the governorship candidates in Delta State have been invited as we've been going through a series of engaging governorship candidates ahead of the election. And so tonight, Mr. Pella is available and hoping that those who said they were caught in campaign activities might make themselves available in the course of the week. So thank you so much indeed for your patience. So let's get back to it. The reasons you were talking about your capacity before we went speaking with Mr. Falana. The question is, if there is one thing that you identify or you would identify as Delta State's biggest problem as of today, what would that be?
The biggest problem with Delta as at today will be that of the fact that we're number 1, number 2 in earnings. We're number 26.
In what?
In earnings.
In the, okay, revenue.
In earnings, revenue. Okay. We are like number 26. So, I mean, financial sustainability index.
So when you say earnings, are you talking alone in terms of internally generated revenue
both
or FAC?
I'm talking about FAC. Now, when you add that to internally generated revenue, we are like number 1 and number 2. Now, and then you have that situation, but we are number 26 on the financial sustainability index. We are the number 2 most borrowed state it doesn't begin to make sense. It doesn't add up. All right. Now, one of the biggest problems is the fact that recurrent expenditure takes over 60% of our budgets. Okay. Now, if you compare that to a state like Borno State, where only about 100 billion is spent for recurrent expenditure compared to over 200 billion spent for recurrent expenditure in ours, I usually would say that if you are owner of a company where your manager is spending twice what your competitor is spending on a particular item, you kick them out. That's basically one of the biggest problems in Delta. And in spite of the huge resources, we don't have on ground enough to show for what is being spent.
So when you say you don't have on ground enough to show, what exactly do you mean? In
terms of infrastructure, in terms of building the economy, in all respects.
What kind of infrastructure are you expecting in Delta State?
I'll give an example. Delta State, 70% of the population lives in the Delta South and Central area. There's only one road that leads to the capital city that is under the control of the state government. The other two roads are federal roads, so we cannot necessarily say that we have control of them, but they are very bad. But the only one road that has been under our control, they have been unable to complete that one road in over 20 years. That's an example that is symptomatic of the problem we have all over Delta.
So how would you change that around? Do you have any plan, specific plan to change that? You see that, so you're talking about connecting.
Interconnectivity.
Of the state by road.
Yes, that's just one example.
So how much of roads do you plan to do should you be elected?
We'll make sure that the major areas are connected, like the example I gave.
Like which part of it?
Like the south to the north. Rural areas to the cities. We'll make sure that Delta roads are well built and last. A lot of the roads that have been done in the past few years go bad after one rainy season. Right, so we're going to ensure that Delta roads, rural roads are built. There are plenty of roads that are all bad. In the Delta North, in the Delta South area, so many of the roads are bad.
So do you have specific roads, the ones that you think, the trunks that you think are important for the commerce and trade in Delta State?
I'll give a few examples. Take the roads in the Anyocha North area. There was a day we were going to go to Uromi from Asaba. It took us over 3 hours. That's a journey that should not have taken more than 45
Uromi
minutes.
is in Edo State.
Edo State, but you go
through... neighboring state.
Yes, but you go through, because the major trunk road that goes through Agbo to Uromi was bad. We had to take internal roads, and those roads are not there. It took us 3 hours to Uromi and about 4 hours to come back. Right, so you have those kinds of examples all over the place.
So, Delta State also has ports in Warri, Sapele, Burutu, and one we wonder how much of help, because we're talking about interconnectivity now, so transportation shouldn't only be in only one aspect. So are you looking in that direction?
Yeah,
and what are you going to do specifically?
I guess at this point, let me give you my plan.
Go ahead, please.
All right? We have a vision to build a better Delta where righteousness, harmony, and prosperity reigns. Now, that's a basic roadmap.
That's an ideological concept that you're bringing.
It's a concept, all right? It's rooted in the from consumption to production vision of our principle for Nigeria. And what we look at doing is we want to enthrone righteousness. Righteousness here simply means doing the right thing. That's the foundation. Part of the problem is being the foundation. Accountability and integrity. Fairness, equity, and justice.
Have those been lacking before?
They have.
In what sense?
I'll give an example with regards to, when I talk about fairness, equity, and justice. We have 3 new universities that have been built in Delta State. 2 of them are built in the Delta North area. That's not fair. That's not equitable. That's not just. Right? And I can count so many other examples, but I don't think we have the time to go through all that. I just want to go through my roadmap. Right? Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, fairness, equity, and justice, eliminate waste and corruption, mass participation of people in government, reorientating the values of our people. That's the foundation. We believe that when we do that, we will be able to create harmony in the land. But we will enable harmony by putting in place state and a well-equipped state and community policing. Now, we believe that when we put those two together, fairness, righteousness together with peace and harmony, it creates an environment where prosperity can thrive. We've had a situation where companies have left Delta, all right? The economy of Delta has gone down because of youth restiveness and a lot of things. But when we put these two together, you will have that kind of situation. Now, we're not just going to leave that to go on its own. If you notice, I'm not talking too much about building roads. I'm not talking too much about healthcare and all that, because those are the rights of our people. I guarantee Deltans that they will have the best roads, the best hospitals, and the best schools. But what we will do is to engender the prosperity in the land. And we have an 8-point agenda, 8 prosperity drivers that will enable prosperity. The first is that we'll pay a living wage.
What amount are you looking at?
We plan to increase the minimum wage progressively to 100,000 naira a month.
So when you, in the first few months on getting into office, is it 30,000 naira nationally?
Naira now.
So what mark are you putting?
We are looking at about 60,000 for the first few
Almost
months.
Immediately?
Yes, almost immediately.
Do you have what it takes? You said that your state is one of the most borrowed states.
Yes.
Where would you get the money from?
Okay. I pointed out the fact that we have states that are using about 100 billion to run recurrent expenditure. We use double that, more than double that. We're going to cut waste and corruption to ensure that money is freed for such things. Okay? In 2019, miscellaneous items in our budget, actual, was over 30 billion. Miscellaneous, over 30 billion. We're going to cut those things. Can I go?
Go ahead.
Okay. So the second key prosperity driver is fiscal autonomy for our local governments. Today, the funds that are to come to local governments don't all get to local governments. Their toll gates on their way will ensure they get the funds, will ensure the quality of people in those local governments are improved, and the people are held accountable. The people hold the local government leaders accountable for the funds that come to them. The third key prosperity driver, prosperity driver is we plan to a social investment scheme where we will give ₦1 million each in interest-free loans payable over 4 years to 100 people in every local government of the state every month.
You have how many local government areas?
25.
25. So 100 people, that's about 2,500.
Yes. We're looking at about 30 billion a year. Okay? I just pointed out miscellaneous items, 30 billion. Okay? We believe that when we cut waste and corruption, we'll be able to take care of those things.
Mr. Pelan, I mean, you are Labour Party, and the heart of Labour Party is a plight of workers. So you've talked about how much you increase the wage.
Yes.
There's been this back and forth about teachers in Delta State.
Yes.
And the national bill that was signed by the president, the order signed by the president on the increase of the age of practice by teachers. What is your own party's ideology in that respect?
Pointed out the fact that we are the workers' party, right? We have the workers' interest at heart. Our policies will be geared towards ensuring that the workers get the best of life. That's what will happen. The issue you just raised, we would look at and ensure that they get the best what they're looking for.
So in what sense? Because, I mean, I've heard some of your party members and your chieftains of your, members of your party and leaders who have talked about how workers are behind them, how the NLC members are behind them, how the teachers are their strength. Could you be more specific about what they stand to gain should they stand with your party at the polls on Saturday?
Okay, the minimum wage is the base
of what you will do.
Of what we will do.
That is on one hand.
It's on one hand. That's the base of what we will do.
Did you go to sleep when you become governor? Should you become governor?
Yes.
you will increase their salary. They should hold on to that.
They should hold me on to it.
Secondly, in terms of the benefit to their livelihood, what again would they benefit?
Today, we have salaries being owed. We would ensure that salaries are paid on time. Pensions are owed. We'll ensure that arrears of pensions are cleared and they are paid on time. Okay? In Delta, they talk about arrears. They talk about a lot of things that are not being paid. We'll ensure that the civil servants get what is due to them.
On a final note, Mr. Pella, your state is an rich state. In that sense, it has an edge over several other states in the Federation because it has a special fund, a 13% derivation fund that goes into the pocket of that is being shared among some states that are being classified as oil-producing states on the Federation. First, I'd like to know whether or not you will probe the funds that have gone into that state in that respect. Would you be doing that? Should you become governor?
I've been asked the question about whether I'll probe government generally. And my answer is I prefer to look at the front rather than look at the rear view mirror. But I also understand that there are certain things that would have happened that would be too difficult to stomach, all right, in terms of the kind of impunity, in terms of the kind of stealing, for lack of a better word, that went on. If we have such situations when we look at it, we will deal with it with the full force of the law.
So you will not look away from those funds and how it's been spent?
I will not look away.
Would you spend it differently?
I definitely will.
How would you spend it differently?
We would ensure that the funds are utilized for the benefit of the people.
So you don't have a plan on where you put the money?
No, we do have a plan. There's upper deck. There's upper deck. The oil funds are supposed to go for development of the areas. You didn't let me finish my plan. But
because of our time.
Yes, I do understand.
Yeah, I have my specific questions.
Yes.
So,
but those funds are meant for the development of the areas. Currently, they're not being used for the development of the areas. They're being shared. We're putting in place a master plan that will enable us to develop those areas.
We need to close now.
Okay.
Should you become, or should you be voted on Saturday, what kind of government do you think people should know you for? Or what kind of governor would you like to be noted for? Should you be elected?
I would like to be noted and remembered as a governor who changed the trajectory of Delta. Delta has been sliding for the last 24 years. We've gone from good to bad to worse. And there's a danger that it will get worse. That's what I tell people. We would change the trajectory. We will start a climb. And putting in place, we have a vision to build a better Delta where righteousness, harmony, and prosperity reigns. That's what I would like to remember.
Kennedy Pella, Labour Party governorship candidate. I wish you the very best in the poll. It's not going to be an easy one, I see, based on my own reading, because there are a lot of heavyweights that are going to be on the ballot, and also the political parties also, we have their weight in it. I wish you the very best. Thank you so much indeed for coming on tonight. Well, that's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow again at 7 p.m., God willing. Bye for now.